And welcome back, my friends. We are here. Top 5 baits for the month of May is finally here. May is the month that I feel like for the majority of the country, some of the fish are just pulling up to spawn and some of the fish have already done spawning. So I'm going to say probably right around that Kentucky line. In the middle United States, I would say somewhere around Kentucky south. I'm going to say a lot of those fish are sort of in transition to start to slide out to their, deep water haunts for the summertime. And then you got, probably Kentucky north, you have fish that are pulling up. There's still a lot of pre-spawn fish that are just pulling up to spawn. Obviously all the way up into New York where these fish haven't even started to spawn, or Minnesota, all the way across the country where these fish are, water temperatures are just rising into the 50s. So a lot of things are going on. So I got a lot of different baits I'm going to talk about. So let's check it out right now.
Let's go.
We're here in Mexico. We are in the Dominican Republic. So I'm going to tell you a couple different tips that have helped me over the years.
Wow! Unbelievable! Jacob Wheeler makes history!
So saying this is a transition month is an understatement because you have to understand what's going on. A lot of the northern states have had a unseasonably cool springtime. And so these fish have been put off, the water temperatures have been really cold, and now all of a sudden from the long-term forecast that I'm seeing is it's going to skyrocket up to 80 degrees and everything's going to be happening a lot faster. So if you have like a spawn, say in Wisconsin or New York, or the spawn's going to happen in such a fast pace now, I feel like, than it would have where maybe trickle spawn, if you have a warm spring, they sort of just slowly go up there and they trickle spawn a little bit more. Some pull up, some pull off. And so I feel like that is going to be how it's going to work, at least for the northern half of the country. Things are going to happen very fast. When that water warms up that fast, those eggs hatch faster, the sunlight, all those things happen a little bit faster. So just a heads up on that. Now, the number one bait I'm going to talk about on the southern half of the country is going to be the pattern that you need to be thinking about is shad spawn. Shad spawn is a huge deal right now, specifically because a lot of the fish, when the water temperatures get up in the upper 60s to low 70s, that is when I'm going to first start to really look at a shad spawn. You almost can guarantee if there's shad in your lake that there's shad spawning somewhere around there. Now, typically, shad will spawn at night. So they're going to be up there around docks, rocks, seawalls, grass like hydrilla, or like bank grass like willow grass. All of those things play, and they stop spawning during the daylight hours. So that's why a shad spawn is such a great pattern for the first hour to 2 hours in the morning. Those fish are up there, they're eating on them all night, and you have an opportunity to take advantage of those post spawners that just got done spawning. They're feeding up before they go out there offshore. So number one bait I'm going to say for that, I'm going to pick a vibrating jig or a white jig, depending on that. Just casting on white is what I'm going to pick. Now, if the water's super clean, you might have to go to more natural colors, but that's going to be a number one pick just because I can cast it around those places. And that is what a lot of fish are really keying in on, are those shads. So I've caught a lot of bass, utilizing this technique, whether I'm fishing docks or, wherever they're at. Now, the thing is, adding to that, a buzz bait's a really good bait for this as well. If the fish are shallower, now I would throw a white toad on here instead of a black one. If the fish are spawning or the fish are being a little bit goofy, I'm going to throw a white toad instead of a black one. If they're on the shad spawn, I'm throwing white. If they're spawning and a little bit more protective, I throw black. So that's sort of typically how I try to do it. But typically I'm going to throw more white in the post-spawn time of year, just for the fact of the matter is those fish are around a lot of shad and they typically bite that pretty well. So buzzbait, this is an accent buzzbait right here. This is my signature series accent buzzbait. And then I just sort of like cut the little head down a little bit and slide that toad up on just like that. So that is going to be my number 2 pick. Number 3, after that shad spawn, or also is going to be a part of the shad spawn or even the bluegill spawn, is going to be a crankbait, a shallow diving crankbait. This is an OG, Rapala OG flat. OG, this sucker right here catches him pretty dang solid. And what he really has more than anything for me is a profile. When the fish, unlike the pre-spawn smaller baits catch the same size bass is little baits a lot of times. or big baits, excuse me. So smaller baits catch the same size bass as big baits at times. I'll throw smaller crankbaits. Post spawn, you really can separate yourself with the size profile of the bait that you're throwing. So I like to throw a bigger profile crankbait when those fish are up there shallow. Now, when the bass get done spawning, the bluegill starts spawning, and that's why this root beer color, it might be root beer crawdad, but it looks a lot like a bluegill. The other thing is, if you're fishing around rocks, to add to the shad spawn, this is a great bait to throw around the rocky banks when the shad are actually up there spawning in the morning times too. So this works well in the mornings, and then it also works well in the afternoons when the bluegill are up there spawning around those areas as well, or riprap banks. I really like this bait a lot for that situation. The reason I love it even more is one, profile, but also it comes with 2 short shank number 3 VMC hooks on it. So that's big as well. For me, that's one of the biggest things when I'm targeting bigger fish, is I want bigger hooks on my baits. The fact of the matter is, it just, if you had a little number 6 on there, you just lose a lot more fish. When you have bigger hooks, you just don't tend to lose nearly as many. And once they get past the bar, you have a lot better chance of doing that. So that's the shallow water side of this. Now, some of those fish that are still spawning and some of those fish that are on grass or bank grass, if that's on your body of water, what am I going to throw? A frog. Okay, a frog is great. Again, it's good for some of the fish that are fry garters. It's really good for some of the fish that are working on the shad spawn. If you have grass in your lakes, it's also really good for fishing around spawning fish. Bluegill beds, same thing. This is another technique that I'm going to be utilizing. A lot of this is shallow water, you guys can see, and this is something that I'm really, one of my favorite things to fish in the month of May, because there's more post spawners, more fry garters. You can roll this frog around all May long and catch a lot of bass. So frog, definitely. Colors, you can really, I keep it very simple. I either throw white, I throw more of a natural color like this guy right here, like it's more like a bluegill color, or I throw black. Typically those are my 3 that I pick. You can go, or a brown, when I do throw a brown one from time to time as well. So it just sort of depends on the water clarity you have. Typically, rule of thumb, the dirtier the water, the more contrasting the colors. So your browns, your blacks, your whites, the clearer the water, the more natural, or whatever you're trying to imitate. So that's number 4. I said I was going to do 6, but I'm actually going to, I said I was going to do 5, but I'm actually going to do 6 because I couldn't narrow it down completely. Now, for all the people up north that are dealing with the push of spawning fish, my April video will be the perfect one for you, because that's going to be more in that time zone of what's going on. Your wacky worms, your plastics, your creature baits. That's going to be where those fish are starting to pull up right now, and that's what I would look at. Your water temperatures in the mid 50s and getting into the low 60s. Now, for everybody down south, it is time. It is time finally to pick up a crankbait. This is a Rapala DT16 and go cranking offshore. The fish are starting to pull out. It's going to get warm this month. And what happens when it gets warm? They get off the bank, thank God, see the bank, see you later, and they get out offshore on those points and those humps and those offshore haunts for the summertime. That is my number 1 bait, is a DT16. It just catches big ones. You can trigger them in biting, and when they first get out there, there is nothing better than a deep diving crankbait on those offshore places. Triggers them. This is the thing. Rick Clunn said this. I remember Jeff Crete was telling the story. He said the big ones always bite something whiny. You can catch those same fish out of the school on a jig or worm, but catching the big ones, you have to make them react, and that is what a crankbait does better than any other bait out there, hands down. Now, a DT16 will run, he'll run about 18 feet, 16 to 18 feet. I throw a DT20, he'll run about 19 and a half. Or if they're on shallower places and shallower points, a DT10. So deep diving crankbait is definitely my mix. And then last but not least is a 1/2 ounce jig. The reason I picked this, versatility. You guys have seen me pick this one several times. Green pumpkin, you can throw black and blue, whatever your favorite chunk is. 1, skipping around boat docks. 2, fishing brush piles and transitions. This is one of my favorite things to do. I start to transition back. I do throw a Texas rig. If your fish are still spawning, I would suggest a soft plastic. So a soft plastic creature bait during the spawn if you're wanting to flip, or if you're fishing around really heavy cover in trees and stuff. If you don't have a heavier weed guard, your jig's gonna get hung up quite a bit. So I would opt for, or fishing bushes, I would opt to flip a soft plastic in those places instead of a jig. But if you're talking about places that have seawalls and docks and rock, a jig is the number one choice for me as far as a versatile bait that I can put on my rod with 17-pound Suffolk fluorocarbon. I can cast it out into brush. I can cast it offshore if there's a group of fish offshore. I can skip up underneath the dock and I can flip a tree with it. That is why I pick a jig. It's just the most versatile. It's one of the most versatile bass fishing lures. I can also swim it if I wanted to swim that thing around somewhere. So that's what I'm picking right there. Those are my 6 baits. I said 5, but there's 6. So hopefully you guys learned a little bit from this month's deal. We have a lot of fun with these. At the end of the day, I have hey, I got to go catch some bass tomorrow. Championship day, Lake of the Ozarks is tomorrow. So we got some work to do. It's supposed to rain. It's cloudy here right now. You can see I have a jacket on. It's actually like 55 degrees. It's a little chilly. So thank you guys so much for watching. We will see you on the next one.